Hello everyone, and welcome to teacher webinar number 4, Brainstorming Brilliant Business Ideas. Today's webinar is brought to you by Teach a Man to Fish. We are an educational charity based in the United Kingdom, whose mission is to empower young people with the skills they need to succeed in school, in work, and in life. Now, a little bit about me. Some of you may know me already. My name's Christoph, and I'm part of a Teach a Man to Fish team. And I've been working on our wonderful educational program, the School Enterprise Challenge, for 5 years now. The School Enterprise Challenge gives young people the chance to become entrepreneurs while still at school. And participants in the program get to plan, set up, and run a real business. In this process, they learn about business, of course, but they also develop a wide range of skills, such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, leadership, and many more. We also have here today my colleague Paula, who's based in South Africa. Can you say hello, Paula?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. So great to have you all here. So thank you for your time today. Looking forward to today's session.
Absolutely. So that's Paula, and she'll be supporting me in answering your questions in the chat bar, and also helping out with the activities, which we're going to do later in the breakout rooms. We really want to make the most of our time together today, and for you to get as much as you can after today's session. So participation in the group activities will make all the difference. I really, really encourage you when the time comes to get actively involved. So before we start, I'd like to share some ground rules for today's webinar. So you'll notice that you are all on mute at the moment, and that's because we have about 45 and still rising number of people in this webinar. So we can't all be speaking at the same time, but don't worry, there will be plenty of opportunities to interact with other participants and share your thoughts throughout the webinar. At regular points during the webinar, I will ask questions which you can answer via the chat box. And I really encourage you, if you have something to say, please pop it in the chat box. And at certain points, I'll also invite some of you to turn on your audio, turn on your video, and share with the rest of the group. So I'll invite you at certain points. Now, I think it would be really nice if you could all very quickly introduce yourselves. So if you haven't done so already, please type your name and your country in the chat box. It's so nice to get a feel for who is here. And for those of you that have already introduced themselves, I'll ask you a different question so we can get to know each other a bit better. Tell me in the chat box, what made you smile today? What made you smile? So I'm going to give everyone 30 seconds to contribute to the conversation, and then I will move on. Lots more people joining from India, I can see, and Sri Lanka. Lots of South Africans today. Someone said that the little birdie on their balcony made them smile today, which is always nice. And someone else said, an old picture of my students. Very nice. Someone said they're smiling because they're able to attend the webinar today. Well, I'm glad we could contribute to your smile. Lots of really, really nice, lots of really nice contributions coming in. It's really nice to connect like that. Okay, so I'm going to move on now, but there will be plenty more opportunities to interact throughout today's session. So let's begin by looking at what we will be covering today.
Hello.
The duration of this webinar will be up to 1.5 hours. And let's have a look at the objectives. In today's webinar, we will introduce you to 2 techniques you can use with your students to help them unleash their creativity and come up with exciting and unusual business ideas. We'll be doing the activities live together today, so you can experience them for yourselves first, and then you can replicate them with your students. We'll also be discussing what makes a great business idea. And I'll share some inspirational stories of school business teams who have been through the process already, and we'll be unpacking their business ideas and seeing what it is that makes them such good ideas. At the end of the webinar, I'll share with you all a link to a survey, and when you complete that survey, you'll be able to download your certificate of attendance, which will have your name in it. So it'll be a personalized certificate just for you to say you attended this webinar. And I'll also share these presentation slides and a list of useful resources. So we're going to touch on various resources today. They'll be in the follow-up email, as well as all the slides. So you're welcome to take notes if you want to. If that helps you take it all in, but you don't have to, because we're going to hand it all over to you in an email. Okay, so let's get stuck into today's topic, which is brainstorming. And I wanted to begin by sharing a quote with you, which is from the famous inventor, Thomas Edison, who some of you may have heard of. And he said, as you can see on screen, to invent, you need a good imagination and a pile of junk. And this person, Thomas Edison, they know a thing or two about inventing popular products because they developed the phonograph, the motion picture camera, and the electric light bulb, which we all use today in some form. So they, that one person played a key role in the invention of 3, life-changing inventions. So with that inspiring or perhaps surprising quote in our minds, I want us to go straight into an activity. This activity is called Worst Possible Idea, and it's also known as reverse brainstorming. I'm going to give you a problem statement and ask you to come up with the worst possible solution to that problem. The problem statement is, lots of people want access to comfortable private transport, but not everyone can afford their own car. So, what is the worst possible solution you can think of to that problem? I want every single one of you to think of as many terrible ideas as you can. You can think of ideas which are silly, impractical, or even illegal. I want to know what the worst solution you can think of to the problem that lots of people want access to comfortable private transport, but not everyone can afford their own car. So I'll give you a few moments to think about it, and as soon as you have an idea, please start sharing them in the chat. Let's get the chat going. Let's see what everyone can think of. Okay, so Amos has said trekking long distances. And Dev has said Uber. We all know Uber. Neru has gone down the illegal route and says to steal someone's car. Amos has gone with another idea, going down the, I guess, the technology route, virtual movement. Hamid has suggested a cart. And Tandazile has suggested that communism must be practiced. Other ideas including buying a jet, asking a friend, hiring a car, riding a bike instead, carpooling, which is essentially what Uber is, I guess. Someone says the government should give a car to everyone for free. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
May I?
A few people are saying motorcycle. I think, Anuradha, you have an idea. What is your idea?
Yeah, thank you. My idea is that he should a person should buy for auto or a cab. Then he should leave other also commuters in between. He should earn money and then reach office.
So buying a cab.
I mean, he should earn the money while he should drive a cab. He should drive a cab as a driver. He should leave other commuters on way. So he will earn money also, and he will himself go to the office also. So that means he is going to have the dual purpose will be solved.
Okay, so sort of being a taxi driver for other commuters.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would be the wild idea I can share. I mean, the dual purpose is going to get solved, that he will earn the money also side by side, because since he is not affording his private car, so he can do like that. I mean, I'm talking in terms of the investment done by a person.
Brilliant.
And later
yeah,
on, he can have his own private car also.
That's a really good idea, I would say. I think you've gone in for the good ideas, which it undeniably is a good idea. We're going down the worst possible idea route. So thanks everyone for getting involved and sharing your worst possible ideas. I think there were some really good ones in there. And you might be thinking that was a very strange activity to do in a webinar where the title is Brainstorming Brilliant Business Ideas. But there is a very good logic behind it. So let's have a look at how to do this activity with your students and kind of discuss why this is such an effective brainstorming technique. So when you try this with your students, the first thing is that you should do it with a real problem statement based on a real problem or need in your community. We explored the topic of how to understand the needs in your community in our last webinar, webinar number 3. So if you haven't seen that webinar, I really invite you to go to our YouTube channel and catch up on it, because that webinar we explored how do you understand the needs of your community. You really need to start with a need. Next, you would get your students to think of the worst possible solutions or ideas for that problem which you just identified. And instead of just getting students to shout out or write down their ideas individually, an interesting technique is to try something called brainwriting. This is where each student writes down his or her worst idea on a piece of paper. So we start with one student, they write down their worst idea, and then they pass the paper to the next student. And that student elaborates on the worst idea. And then they pass it on, and then that next student elaborates, and then they pass it on, and then that next student elaborates. And so on. We do it until all of the students have elaborated on that worst idea. It's a great way to ensure that every student has time to think about their ideas. So it allows, fast and slow students to get involved equally, and everyone gets to input because we pass it along to every student. So doing it in this way can lead to broader, more diverse, and a more interesting range of ideas at the end than if you had got students to just brainstorm separately, individually. Once your students have come up with lots of terrible ideas, the next step is to get them to identify what it is about the ideas which makes them so bad. So for each of the ideas that you came up with, why are they bad? You work on this as a group, and finally, you challenge yourselves. You can use that information to work backwards and turn the bad ideas into good ones. So for example, ask your students what the opposite of their bad idea would be. Or what would happen if they were to remove one of the attributes from one of the ideas which makes it bad and replaced it with something else? Or did a mix and match between multiple bad ideas? Does combining multiple bad ideas come out with a good idea? It's worth testing out. So, I want to ask you now, teachers, why do you think, or do you think, that reverse brainstorming is a good idea? What advantages can you see of doing brainstorming this way rather than the sort of traditional way of let's all have great ideas and let's just pick on the people who have ideas? Why do you think this reverse brainstorming, also known as worst possible idea, what advantages can you see? Please tell me in the chat box. Erica says that lateral thinking will kick in, which I would absolutely agree with. Chitana said it would lead to improved insight of business ideas. Deepa likes the fact that every student will get a chance. And Chinky says it is much easier to think of worst ideas sometimes. And I tend to agree with that. Thinking of the best ideas can really consume time. Lirato Matilda says it develops critical thinking and self-esteem. And Tandazile says, no one is afraid to come up with a bad idea. Lots of you are saying you like that every child gets to say their idea. And yeah, that's personally one of my favorite aspects. So I'm going to recap why we at Teach a Man to Fish think it's a really good and effective technique. Firstly, looking for the worst ideas instead of the best ones, it takes the pressure off. It allows your students to be more playful and adventurous, because you know that your idea is not going to get shot down or criticized, because the whole point is to find bad ideas. Secondly, flipping brainstorming on its head is a good way to get the creative juices flowing, and it can encourage those who are not so confident in expressing themselves to suggest ideas. Thirdly, coming up with ideas as a group works best when all ideas can be expressed equally. And then we later assess them all and mix them up in unconventional ways. And I think the thing to know is that with ideas, one often leads to another. And sometimes a bad idea can lead to a good idea in ways which we would never normally have imagined. So it really allows us to be open-minded and to do that lateral thinking, which Erica mentioned earlier. So my question to you is, would you be willing to try this with your students? Please tell me in the chat. If yes, why would you be willing? And if no, why would you not do this with your students? I'm interested to know, you're the teachers in the classroom, would you do this with your students? Let me know in the chat. Chitana says it's a nice icebreaker. And Amos says I really like this. Amos says it's a play way to approach teaching and learning. Amos, if you're there, can you switch on your microphone and maybe your video and tell us, what do you mean by play way? Amos, are you there with us? Okay, looks like we don't have Amos. Erica says that she would use this technique because she has different age groups in her team and she thinks the younger students would feel comfortable doing this. Erica, would you be able to come off mute and just tell us why you think this would particularly benefit the younger students?
Hi. Well, I find that the younger students are so afraid of making mistakes or looking like an idiot in front of the others. And I'm pretty sure they can come up with some really nice ideas. So if they're told to come up with really stupid ideas, then you'd probably hear more from the younger students than from the older students, and we can get a whole lot more ideas flowing through the discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've certainly seen that happen, and I'm really glad. I'm glad you can foresee that happening as well. Just, you know, the sillier the better. Let's make everyone feel at ease, and then we can go through the steps we just discussed, which you know, include going through the ideas, identifying what makes them bad, and then maybe modifying certain aspects to turn them good. So if we start with the silly, no pressure, get loads of ideas down, and then we work with what we have. It's a great way of having a lot to work with. Lots of you are saying it's a great way to get lots of people involved. It takes the pressure off and is good for boosting confidence. Absolutely. Okay. So now that we're all warmed up with activity, I'd like to share our 3 simple steps to a brilliant business idea. But before I do that, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think makes a great business idea? So we're not doing silly, we're not doing bad. What makes a good business idea in your opinion? Please tell me in the chat. And if you attended our last webinar, I hope you've got plenty of ideas on this topic. in the chat, what do you think makes a great business idea?
I think chat is disabled.
Dev says the chat is disabled. Is anybody else experiencing that?
Yeah, even me too.
Paolo, are you able to help with that?
Yes, I think everybody.
Chat experiences the same. Chat is disabled.
I haven't done anything, so I'm not sure what's going on, but let me have a look.
Sure, thanks, Paola. Does anybody have any ideas they'd like to share whilst we get the chat up and working again?
I'll have a quick word.
Yeah, we can see your message, but we are not able to chat there.
Oh, well, that's going to be...
Me too.
Okay, I'm going to have a look at that. Krista, probably you can carry on. I know Erika, I think, wanted to share something while I look into this.
Yes, Erica, please share your thoughts.
I just think when you're serving people and you're meeting their needs, that is the principal idea of making a good business idea. And then everything comes with that, you know, the profits and things like that.
So you're saying really focus on the need of the customers, of the people, and the profits will come.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody else who'd like to add something different?
May I?
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
please.
Yeah, hi. Actually, I think the innovations and inventions or business ideas, all they come according to the present scenario in which we are living. Like suppose this pandemic has come, so we are having the more innovations towards the mask and the different types of sanitizers, they have come. So this is all the new ideas came when the situation is such. So I think the business ideas also come according to the situation or the present scenario which the people are facing in that particular time period.
Okay, so really focusing on the moment and I guess trends. So as horrible as it is, during the pandemic, there was a trend of needing masks and masks were good business. So I guess it's being in tune with the time. Very good. Would anybody else like to add anything? One last person before we move on?
Yeah, can I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so when we talk about a business idea, it should be a solution to a problem. So basically, we need to identify a problem, the major problem, what we are facing probably, and if we can find a solution for that, which is feasible enough. So that would be a great idea, in my opinion.
Okay, so I guess the need, so you're kind of echoing Erica there, but you're also adding the idea of feasibility, which leads really nicely to our next point. So, you know, here at Teach 'em How to Fish, we've supported thousands of schools around the world to set up their own businesses. And we think there are three really important things which together lead to a great business idea. And I'm going to share these with you now. The first one, and you guys got it, is knowing how to make yourself useful to other people, being able to spot problems in the community which you could solve through a business, and identifying gaps in the market which are ready and waiting to be filled. As I mentioned earlier, our last webinar was all about how your students can use empathy to understand what problems there are in the community. So if you missed it or you need a refresher, make sure you catch up on our YouTube channel. Once you know what the problems are, the second step is to understand your capacity to solve them. That means knowing what resources you have available which you could use to start a business. Resources can be physical things like school buildings, computers, sewing machines. They can be natural things like a water supply or farmland. It can be to do with location, like being near a big city, being near a tourist attraction, or being within walking distance of a market. Or it can be to do with skills. Can you do farming? Can you do cooking? Can you do sports? Can you do arts and crafts? I won't go into too much detail on this, but we have a resource assessment template, which is part of business guide number 2 of the School Enterprise Challenge materials. So I'll talk about the School Enterprise Challenge later, but when you register, which is free, you get access to this wealth of ready-made resources, which will help you with this. Finally, in order to stand out from the competition, you're probably going to need creative. And you're either going to need to come up with a new business idea, which nobody else in your area is doing, or you're going to need to find a way to adapt an existing business idea and make it slightly different to make it attractive. So now let's take a look at a few schools who have put this into practice and come up with some truly great business ideas. The first example I want to share comes from the students at Sancta Maria International School in India. Last year, their school was closed because of a pandemic, and students were being taught online. They didn't let that stop them from setting up a business though. Knowing that it would be harder than usual to make and sell a physical product, they came up with a digital business idea instead, a podcast. So the savvy students knew that their idea had potential because through research, they found that the podcast industry is a growing market and podcasts are easily accessible regardless of your location. All you need is an internet connection. And we know that more and more people around the world are gaining access to the internet every day. The students did some research and they discovered that people of all ages want to catch up on current affairs, but they are short of time. Their research also showed that parents in particular want their children to be well informed about the news, but parents themselves don't have time to condense all the news for their children. So here we have our need. They realized that starting their own podcast would be a relatively cheap business idea to implement because they already had access to the technology they would need to record it and the skills to research topics and present them confidently. Finally, they knew that there were very few podcasts run by teenagers in India. So that would be their unique selling point. Personally, I really love this idea. You know, this school, they joined the School Enterprise Challenge at a time where they were all separate from each other. They were all being taught remotely, and they just understood that setting up, making and selling a physical product was going to be really difficult. And by doing a needs analysis and by looking at their resources, they established that they could create a podcast. And I think that's a really, really brilliant idea. The next example comes from a team of 8 students in rural Nigeria. They came up with the idea of farming catfish. And this was because their government put a ban on the importing of frozen fish. And that has driven up the demand for locally produced alternatives. So that's the need right there, which these students in Nigeria identified. As well as a large and ever-increasing demand for their product, these students knew that they had the resources they needed to turn their idea into reality. They have enough land in their school premise, and they have a constant water supply to build the ponds. They also have a storehouse, which they can use as a warehouse for the fish to be kept, and their school has access to a vehicle where they can go out, buy the things they need, bring them to their school, and deliver the fish when they need them, when they're ready. So that was the resources. These students aim to reach a wider pool of customers by developing an e-commerce platform. So customers can buy the fish online and have it delivered right to their doorstep. Honestly, we were so impressed with these students in rural Nigeria. Not only did they, look at their needs and their resources and come up with a great idea of catfish farming, they had tons of creative ideas on how they could raise the startup capital. So, catfish farm, it's not free to start. There are undeniably startup costs, but these students, they came up with loads of ideas to raise that startup capital, like organizing local entertainment events and making and selling liquid hand soap. And as a little aside, if you come up with a business idea that's quite big, like catfish farming, which requires money, you might need to do a few small businesses, small things, which can get you a bit of money to invest in that bigger business. So don't be scared to have micro businesses before you go into your full business. All right, let's look at the final example. And this comes from a group of young students at St. Edmund's School in the UK. Through thorough market research, they discovered that there was a significant demand from other students at their school for fun tie-dye products. And they took the needs of their customers and the environment into account by setting up a system where customers could bring their old clothes to be recycled and given a new lease of life by being tie-dyed. So instead of using new t-shirts, it would be better for the environment and actually cheaper for them to get their friends to bring their old t-shirts, which they're not so excited about anymore, and that's what they tie-dyed. Their business was an obvious choice because they already had everything they needed to get started. At their school, they already teach design and technology, which has its own classroom, which allows them space, at lunchtime and after school to make the products. They already had creative team members, and some of them had even done tie-dye at home. So those students were able to teach the other students how to do it, and then they had a team of people who were able to tie-dye. And they also had access to computers and printers to create promotional leaflets, and they had access to a school newsletter and the student council who also helped to promote the business. So really, your students, they need to be savvy and they need to use the resources which are available to them, which is exactly what these students did. So I hope that these examples have inspired you and have shown you how the combination of the three factors which we discussed, a real need, knowing how to make the most of your existing resources, and some creativity and innovation can lead to a really successful school business. Now, I'm going to introduce to you another brainstorming technique, which can help you to guide your students to put together the pieces of the puzzle. How to solve a problem with the resources they have by thinking creatively. And this technique is called the Scamper Technique. It's a great tool to help you generate ideas for new products or services by encouraging you to think about how you could improve existing ones. So this is to take off the pressure of coming up with something completely new and original. Instead, we're going to improve something which already exists through Scamper. Scamper is a mnemonic where each letter, S-C-A-M-P-E-R, stands for a different prompt to help you and your students think more creatively. So I'm going to play a video which will guide us through all the prompts. And in this video, they are using peanut butter as an example. So the man in the video is going to take peanut butter as an example, and they're going to use the Scamper technique. And we can watch for 2 minutes.
Tinker, as always, you've been most helpful.
It's okay.
Scamper is an acronym with 7 letters. Each letter gives us a unique technique that will help us imagine our product from innovative and sometimes downright ridiculous perspectives. The first letter in Scamper is S, which stands for substitute. Look at the components that make up your product. Replace or substitute one part for something else. In our example, we're going to consider replacing peanuts, the main ingredient in our product, with almonds instead. The second letter, C, stands for combine. Is there anything we can combine with our product to make it more attractive or efficient to the end user? Peanut butter and jelly have a long-standing reputation as one of the greatest food mashups. Place in between 2 slices of bread and a satisfyingly sweet sandwich awaits you. The third letter, A, is for adapt. This is probably the trickiest technique of the 7. Is there a way we can adapt our product to external stimuli or to an industry demand? How about a healthier, low-fat option? Anybody feeling like powdered peanut butter? Suit yourself. Next letter is M for modify. Let's increase the size of the container for large families. Or maybe we can minimize the container to accommodate those who want peanut butter on the go. Next we come to the letter P for put to another use. In what ways can we use peanut butter differently than it was intended? We can bake cookies with it, combine it with a pine cone to make a hanging bird feeder. Did you know that you could shave with peanut butter? I'm really liking some of the ideas I'm getting with that concept. Next up is the letter E for eliminate. Is there elements that we could eliminate to increase efficiency or reduce waste? I could eliminate the traditional method of spreading peanut butter on bread and just eat it directly with a fork. Maybe I could eliminate the product itself and use the jar for storing nuts and bolts. Okay, we've come to the last letter, R, for reverse. This is where we flip the direction of the product or process in hopes of seeing it from a different perspective. What if, instead of spreading the peanut butter on bread, we toasted the bread and dipped it in the jar? Or what if we changed the threads on the lid so it screws on clockwise instead? Imagine your child's surprise when they can't seem to open the peanut butter jar. Well, Billy, your mom did tell you to ask first. Now that we
Okay, I hope you could all hear that clearly. The man in the video explained the Scamper technique using peanut butter as his example. And he stated what each of the 7 letters stand for, and he explained them briefly. I know he was talking really quickly, so I'm going to run through them again now.
Scamper is an acronym with 7 letters. Each letter.
So, starting with S, S stands for substitute. And the question you should be asking yourself is, can I replace or change any parts? C stands for combine. And the question is, can I combine or merge it with other objects? A stands for adapt, and the question is, what could I copy or borrow? M stands for modify, and the question is, what can be made higher or bigger or stronger? P stands for put to another use. The question is, what else can this be used for? E is for eliminate. How can I simplify this product? And finally, R stands for reverse. And the question you should ask yourself is, what other arrangements might be better? So now we've listened to the man talk about the Scamper technique, and I've run through what each of the 7 letters stand for. I'd like you to take a brief moment to really take these in. So really, look at the presentation and take in the various words, because now Paula is going to put you into small groups and you can have a go yourselves at using the Scamper technique, but with a different example. I'll explain in a moment. But first, I just want to quickly explain how the breakout rooms are going to work. So you will be assigned to a breakout room and you will be moved there automatically. So you will see this, this will pop up on your screen and it will tell you you are joining breakout room 1 or 2 or 3. And that number of your breakout room is the number of your group. And you'll need to know your group number, and I'll explain why in a moment. In the breakout room, remember to click on these buttons, the unmute button and the start video button, so that you can take part in the conversation. You know, in this webinar, you're only going to get out what you put in. So we really encourage you to actively get involved and experience this activity for yourselves so that you're ready to carry it out with your students. Finally, if at any point in your breakout room you need assistance, you can click on Ask for Help and then Invite Host. But please only click this option if you really need help. We don't want to be called into your room and disrupt the flow of your interaction. So only if you're really stuck, you can call and ask for help. So let's look at the activity. You're going to have 12 minutes in groups of around, I think, 6 to 8 people. And you are going to work through the prompt letters, S, C, A, M, P, E, and R. And you're going to see how many ideas you can come up with for an alternative use of a pencil. So the example we just saw in the video was for peanut butter. Now I want you to think about a pencil. My challenge to you is to be the group which can come up with the most ideas. And to help you and your group mates to collaborate on this, we've set up a Jamboard for you. So some of you might have used Jamboard before, and it might be new to some of you. So I'm just going to do a quick demo. So Jamboard looks like this. I hope you can see it. And Paula is going to share a link in the chat box. That link will take you to this Jamboard. So please click, everyone, click on that link when Paula shares it, and it will open up the Jamboard in a new tab on your internet browser. And you will be able to see that we have set up one slide for each group. Remember, your group number is the number of your breakout room. So if you go in breakout room number 3, you need to go to the slide for group 3. And the way you can do this is by navigating using these arrows. So I've used the right arrow here to navigate to group 3. And then as a group 3 needs to think, we've got our pencil. How can we substitute? How can we combine? How can we adapt? How can we modify? How can we put to another use? How can we eliminate? How can we reverse the pencil to come up with a different or innovative idea? We've set up some post-it notes for you here. So under substitute, you can put your ideas here. Under combine, you can put your ideas here, etc. Remember, you need to go to the slide for your group, and your group number is the same number as your breakout room. So I think, Paula, at this point, you have a few things to say.
Yes, thank you, Christoph. So let me first check with everyone on the chat. How are you feeling about this? For me, it's exciting getting you to interact with the help of a Jamboard, but thumbs up for this. Are you all ready? Yes, I'm really also excited. Amazing. So to make your life easier in terms of knowing which group you are at, Christopher was saying your group number will be your breakout group number. So I'm going to share with you one name per room so you know which number you're at, right? Just one name. There'll be 8 people, 6 to 8 people per room. So room number 1, you'll have Erica there. So Erica, you know your group will be number 1. Room number 2, we have Lerato and Patiswa. Forgive me my pronunciation if I'm mispronouncing your name, but we have Lerato and Patiswa. That's group number 2. Room number 3, we have Sinat and Florinda. That's group number 3. Group number 4, we have Sarita and Nirmala. They are taking part on group number 4. Group number 5, it'll be Edmund and Kulwinder. Edmund and Kulwinder. Room number 6, Emmanuel and Niru. Number 7, Nisha and Shalu. And number 8, Innocent and Mondi. And room number 9, Chetana and Chinky. And I think Chinky is the one that flagged. Sorry, let's go with another name. Chetana and Michael. Okay? So those are the numbers you will see on your screen when I click on open rooms, that you'll get the group number, and that's the breakout, sorry, the Jamboard that you need to look for. So I'll do 2 things at the same time at the moment. I'm going to paste the link to the Jamboard on the chat so you can actually access it, right? Link to Jamboard, you have it over there on the chat. Please click on there so you can access the Jamboard. Yes, I can see people joining, amazing. And if you're all ready, remember group number that is showing up on your screen for the room is the same that you need to go and check on the Jamboard. If you're all ready, we'll see you back in 12 minutes.
And you will come back automatically. So you have 12 minutes to come up with ideas, and then Zoom will automatically bring you back. So we'll see you in 12 minutes, everyone.
Off we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. So what did you think of that activity? I mean, I'm really interested to hear how it went in your respective groups. Was it easier or harder than you expected? What did you enjoy? What did you find surprising? Please share your reflections in the chat. So in the chat, I want everybody telling me what they thought of doing Scamper in their breakout rooms. People are saying that was lots of fun. It was exciting. Someone said there were some great ideas. Zinad says we don't need pencils anymore. Someone said it was challenging. Erica said it was fun, but she felt like she was in a race. Deepa, you said it was a great experience. I can see you with your camera on. Why don't you turn on your audio and share with us why you thought it was a great experience?
Yeah, usually when we ask our students to come out with ideas and when we give the task, I could experience that in the group today, wherein we all were, actually, asking each other, what can be done. And it was like we are competing and we are trying to get the ideas. So it was like fun back to school days where, I was trying to, get the ideas as a group, as a team. So that I feel happy.
Thanks, Deepa. That's really nice to hear. Patiswa, you've said realizing there is no stupid answer. Could you share a little bit about that?
I think for me, as we were brainstorming brainstorming, I realized that each team member was coming with different answers that I wouldn't have thought of, and realizing that those answers were not stupid, but they meant something when you look at those letters. I think that for me stood out.
Yeah, it's a really good activity or technique for helping young people to realize that stupid ideas are not so stupid. They're actually important in the process of coming up with ideas. So I really like the way you put it. There's no stupid answers. So great.
It's basically brainstorming activity.
Yes, exactly. And as you've seen, a brainstorming technique like Scamper can be great to help you think outside of the box. But not all of the ideas which you came up with will be realistic. And not all of them could actually be implemented. So after all the brainstorming, your students will need to carefully narrow down their choices to decide on their best final idea. And that's what I want to talk about next. We recommend at Teach 'em and Fish doing this through a feasibility study, which is a series of questions to help your students assess different aspects of their idea. For example, if they have the necessary materials and skills to do it, if the product will be easy to store and transport, if it will be in demand all year round, etc., etc., to help them decide which one is most feasible or the best idea to implement. I'm afraid we don't have time to go through it all in detail now, but on the screen, you can see part of a feasibility study worksheet. And to access the whole thing and to find out how to implement it with your students, I encourage you to register for the School Enterprise Challenge. We're now entering the last part of the webinar, and I just want to bring, this whole thing to life. And I wanted to share with you a real life example of a school business team who make and sell a clever product, which is actually adapted from a pencil. So we're looking at Vida Vidyasa DAV Public School in India, and they had the idea of seed pencils, also known as sprout pencils. They contain a seed capsule at the end of the pencil instead of where you would normally have an eraser. So when the pencil becomes too short to write with, you simply plant the pencil into some soil and you watch it grow into flowers or herbs or vegetables, depending on what type of pencil you bought. It's a really unusual product and they don't have many competitors in their local market. So it's proven to be a really popular business idea. And it just goes to show how with some creativity, you really can make money out of something as simple as a pencil. And to give you an idea of how these students have got on, since the pandemic hit, these students are no longer able to hold physical sales events. So they've taken their school business online and they've launched a YouTube channel, which has over 1,500 subscribers. And they're using YouTube to promote their organic products, like the seed pencils, but they also include items like notepads and jute bags. And they organize events like quizzes and competitions. So here we can sell them, we can see them in the picture pre-pandemic, selling their pencils, at school and outside of school. Obviously, that's not possible at the moment, but they've been really, adaptive and they've taken it online, which I think is really noteworthy. This is, an incredible example of a school which has been taking part of School Enterprise Challenge for a number of years, and they've adapted well to the COVID restrictions. So, congratulations to them, and I hope it can give you some inspiration also. So we're now getting towards the end of today's session, and I'd like to pause just for one moment to ask you to reflect. And I want you to think about what is the one thing you will do with what you have learned today. So we've looked at a few things today, but what's the one thing that stood out and that you're going to actually do something with it? So take a moment to think and just let me know in the chat box, you know, what's the thing you're going to do after today? Okay, Deepa says converting worst ideas into good ideas. And Chitana also says reverse brainstorming. So that activity which we did first has really sort of captured some people's imagination, which is great. We're reflecting on what is the one thing you will do with what you learned today. Jyotsna says they will implement Scamper. And Emmanuel says they will get students and develop a business idea together. Great. Great. It's really nice to look at the chat and just see these ideas coming through. It sounds like for some of you, there has definitely been something of value which you can actually take to your students, to your classroom, and you can implement that with them. So I'm really happy that is the case. If any of you have been to any of our webinars before, then you will know that we always end by sharing a list of useful resources for you to discover more about the day's topic. So the first resource we want to share with you is a handy article which has a list of questions to help guide your students through the Scamper brainstorming technique. So the link is here on the slide, and the slide will be sent to you by email shortly. So when you get the email, make sure you open the presentation and go and check out this article, because it's a really good one to help you do Scamper technique with your students. And the second resource we want to share today is the School Enterprise Challenge. We really think it's the most important resource in this field. It comes with business guides for teachers, and it comes for ready-made worksheets for students. And we really think it's a great resource for brainstorming brilliant business ideas. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it briefly now. The School Enterprise Challenge is our award-winning experiential learning program, which will guide you as teachers to support your students to come up with a business idea, create a business plan, and launch and run their school business. Students get to become young entrepreneurs, and they get to sell real products or services to real people. And our educational materials, they support you the whole way. Through the program, your students will develop skills such as communication, problem solving, and leadership. It's completely free to take part, and this year we've introduced lots of exciting new features to offer you the best support possible, whatever your circumstances. So even if you're in lockdown and you're teaching remotely, still possible to take part in the School Enterprise Challenge, because we have an online platform and you can do the work over there with your students, even if you're in separate places. You can find out more and you can register now. Registration is open until the 21st of July, so you have about a week. Go and check it out, and if it looks interesting to you, register for free. If you have any questions about the School Enterprise Challenge, you can put them in the chat and Paula will be happy to answer them. And I am going to start wrapping up by encouraging you to stay connected with us. So we are Teacher Man to Fish. You have all of our channels over here, and the School Enterprise Challenge, you have all of our channels over there. This is included in the slide deck, which we'll send you, so you'll be able to click them directly from the slides. And finally, as promised, you can get your attendance certificate by filling in a very short survey. So Paula has already shared the link in the chat. It will also be included in the email along with a slide. Your feedback is really important to us, and please be, completely honest. Tell us what you like, tell us what could be improved. We always try and make these webinars as fun and as engaging and as enriching as possible. So please share your thoughts with us in the survey, and then at the end of the survey, you'll be able to download your own personalized attendance certificate with your name in it. So that's at the end of the survey. That's it for today. I hope you found it useful. That was the 4th webinar in our brand new series of webinars for 2021. Next week, we'll be running webinar 5, which is a very, very special Q&A, question and answer style format, featuring teachers who have guided their students to plan, set up, and run a successful school business. So I really encourage you to not miss this opportunity and to join us to hear these teachers. They're going to be talking live, and if you have a question for them, they'll be answering questions live. It'll be taking place next week on Tuesday the 20th at 2 p.m. UK time, and on Thursday 22nd of July at 4 p.m. UK time. We'll be sending emails about these, and you can convert it to your local time so you know what time you need to be in front of your computer. The links to register are in our emails and in our social media channels, so make sure you stay connected with us. On that note, I'd like to say thank you everyone for joining us today, and goodbye. I hope you all have a wonderful end to the week. Thank you very much.